for joining me. We are starting a new show here on Sanctuary Matrix, and we're going to be talking about the origins of Christian rock. I am Pastor Bob 2.0, and I am glad that you're here with me. For those of you that are new, the Pastor Bob 2.0 came to me from Cornerstone 2010. And I filled in for Pastor Bob, and I was introduced as Pastor Bob 2.0, so that's how it all started. But this week, we have Rex Carroll from WhiteCross with us. I'm going to take a minute here to dial him in, and that way he can be part of this. All right. Well, Rex, thanks for joining us on this new podcast, broadcast, whatever you want to call it.
So, it's good to see you, Bob.
You too.
Yeah, we go back a ways there in Wapaka, don't we?
We do. Yep. Rex, you've been up to the church to play. You've done
several times.
Several times, and we even did a one set together. I sang and you played.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
The first time I actually met you, to introduce you, was at that Cornerstone. You did a blues jam, and I introduced you. You came up, but even before that, I don't know if you remember this or not, but you did a sound class for the Assembly of God Church Growth Conference. It was called.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was a presenter for a youth ministry event, and we had that meeting beforehand where we were sitting in the same room, and I looked over, and that's when you still had the long Gallagher kind of hair thing going on.
Yeah, the evolution of the hair. I used to have hair like my son has a full head of hair, beautiful hair.
Yeah.
And then, half an inch goes every year. And then after many decades, and I'm looking at I start looking like Doc Brown in Back to the Future.
There you go.
So eventually I just decided, it'd be just better just to whack it off.
Yeah, and that's the way to go, is just get rid of it.
That's what I did. But my head always burns, so I just feel comfortable wearing the cap now.
Perfect.
I'll take the cap off.
There you go.
I'm not trying.
Hey, that's an exclusive on this first show here.
I just kind of prefer it on, so so that's kind of my look these days.
Is that like my first exclusive interview point where you took your hat off for us?
No, I'll play live, like I'm doing a live show, and if it gets really hot, sometimes I'll take the cap off. It's just, mostly I just feel more comfortable with it on, so kind of like a Joe Satriani thing, I guess. I don't know.
Nice.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, well, and the hair is what gave it away, because we were in that training moment before that seminar started, and I turned and looked around, and I was in the music buying industry for bookstores, and I was like, holy cow, that's Rex Carroll. So I went over and said hi to you, and then our paths crossed again in early, maybe it was 2000, at the Striper reunion concert at the Rave.
Okay, yeah.
In Milwaukee, and I saw you, and we said hi to each other. But then we connected when I was the pastor up here at Wapaka, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, because I have family connections to the area as well. So.
Yes, yep, you do. Well, you've been a long time veteran of the Christian metal, Christian rock genre, and no doubt people that are watching this have either seen you at Elements of Rock, or they remember you back in the Cornerstone days, or they've been to a concert here and there. And I thought we would just talk a little bit about WhiteCross, and of course King James, Rex Carroll Band, and you have one other band listed on your website.
Fierce Heart.
There you go. Now, is that your original band?
Fierce Heart is about to be in the news again, because I'm getting set to release the second album from that group.
Wow.
And that was the first group I was ever in. Okay, so backtrack a little bit for those of you who don't know me. This is how I got started in music. Honest to goodness, this is the truth. And it's never supposed to happen this way in real life. But this is like a made for TV, like a cheesy movie on Netflix or something. So I used to love Deep Purple was my favorite band, and I followed all of the splinter groups. And naturally, I followed Whitesnake when nobody knew who they were in America. They were like a British import, and I read in one of the import magazines that they fired both of their guitar players. They were looking for a new guy. I
Really?
thought, I will hate myself forever if I don't at least try to do something. So I made a little cassette demo of myself, a cassette tape.
Right on.
He used to sell cassette tapes in the checkout lane at the grocery store. That's where we used to buy them. And I played a little guitar and the cassette tape, and I mailed it to the address on the back of the record cover.
And not too many people remember those days. You know, the younger kids, like, you could get a hold of a band right through their jacket, you know, on the album, vinyl, cassette, whatever.
And about 3 or 4 weeks later, the head of the A&R department, that's artist and repertoire, which is a fancy word for the talent scout.
Mm-hmm.
The entire head of the A&R department at Atlantic Records. I mean, this was like a very huge thing. People don't know, well, what is Atlantic Records? Well, that was the label that Led Zeppelin was signed on.
It's a big deal.
And a bunch of other groups. This was a very big deal in its time. And so he calls me on the phone and he goes, "Is this Rex?" And my hand started to shake and I got more and more nervous and I lost my grip and I dropped the phone onto the floor and came crashing down. And I thought, oh, there goes my shot. The phone is going to shatter into like a million itsy bitsy pieces. But that didn't happen. And so that eventually led to my very first rock band, which was a group called Fierce Heart. We did one record for Atlantic.
Okay.
And that was a big thing in many ways. If I had not had that experience, that ended up being for me, it was like a training. I got to work with two of the very best top producers in the world today. A little name dropping: Chris Lord Alge and Tom Lord Alge. So those of you musicians would know who that is. But I mean, I had the best of the best. Our personal manager was a guy who had co-managed for Peter Frampton and Humble Pie and just some really heavy hitters in the music business. And so that was my musical education. That was my education. And how do you be in a band, and how do you go into a recording studio, and how do you do things? What's the process? So that's where I learned all of that. And if I hadn't have gone through that experience, I never would have gotten to WhiteCross, although I suppose we would have, but it would not have had the same level of impact.
Sure.
That it did. So that was like a training ground for me.
What years are we talking?
Oh, that was there was like almost 2 years of the head of the A&R department at Atlantic was teaching me how to play guitar. The guy is an authority on guitar. He knew everything about Gary Moore, Michael Schenker, all these different guitar players. And I said, "Oh yeah, well, why does he do that?" And he'd be like, "Well, because when I was in the studio with him, that's the way he showed me how he did it." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I kept my mouth shut and I learned, and that would have been, and we recorded in '84. Record came out in 1985. It took about a year, and that record, it almost made it, and then it didn't quite get to that critical mass point.
Okay.
We were on the verge of we were going to make a video for MTV, and then our contract was sold to Polydor, and things went downhill from there. And it's like that was a great opportunity for me at the time, but the band itself didn't work out. but I carried all of that experience. I had been in my college days before that. I had a long-standing thing about, I want to do a band that is has Christian lyrics and gives the glory to God. And this is kind of a strange thing, but I used to
Yeah.
listen to Black Sabbath albums, and I go, man, they talk about the truth all the time, and
Yeah.
they pull up one step short of giving God the glory. But it seems like they're on the right track. But and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was a band that had uh, the same swag as like one of these heavy hitter bands, and then could just flat out, it's like, well, it all comes from God, and God is the source.
Yeah.
And so I had this desire to create a Christian rock band. And then in 1977, I met the Resurrection Band with Glenn Kaiser, and um, I met him, and he met me.
Right.
We kind of ran into each other, and
A
that
force to
was
be
really
reckoned
cool for
with.
me because that gave me at least it kind of gave me a template. Like, well, if you do a Christian band, you can create a band, and it can kind of be like this. So that was an influence for me, not for the music per se, but as far as you can have a Christian band, and this is how this group, the Resurrection Band, this is how they do it. So you can, kind of come up with your own thing. I mean, that showed
Yeah.
me, well, at least there's somebody else doing it.
Well,
And there was, I consider myself at the tail end of a core group of people that had this similar idea. I want to just invent something from scratch that's never been done before.
mhm.
And boy, those early days were really awkward, um, as far as getting the band off the ground and explaining to people what it is you do. And they say, "Oh, you're in a rock band?" It's like, yeah, we do this Christian stuff. And people kind of scratch their heads. They didn't really know what it was about, but
Yeah.
but the kids knew. They bought it.
Sure. Well, yeah, and you had the talent musically, you had the sound. Some sources online would even equate early days of White Cross to a sound like Rat.
Oh yeah,
And
still, for
still,
yeah, the Christian version of Rat. In fact, I was in the studio in New Jersey working on our second album, and they hand me the phone and they say it's Fred Curry from Cinderella,
oh,
and he's like, Fred gets on the phone, he's like, "Hey man, I'm at a party with Stephen Piercy, and he's just so honored that there's a group that idolizes Rat." And I'm like, well, not exactly, but I just let him talk.
yeah.
Um, so they have heard of us at any rate.
Okay, so
I don't
White
know.
Cross got started, if I understand read correctly, in 1985.
Yeah, we started in 1885. After I did this whole experience with the Pierce Heart Band on the major label, and then so well, be that as it may, my desire is still to have a Christian band.
Yeah.
So I met Scott Wenzel, and Scotty was like, "Oh, great! Well, I have a group called White Cross. There's two words, and we rehearse on Thursday nights, and I've been praying for a guitar player." So I'm like,
Okay.
"Well, it's not that simple." I'm thinking to myself, "Well, it's not that simple," but you can't tell Scotty that because I joined the band and we made a record, and then everything went boom, and then we were on tour and everything else. So in his mind, it was that simple.
Yeah.
But I guess it's all perspective. But you still, so this is a lesson for anybody who wants to start a Christian band. You have to work. You got to work, work, work like there's no tomorrow. But then, on the other hand, you have to remember that, well, either God is building the house or you're working in vain.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure of your calling first, and then so it both go together.
Well, and let's talk about your foundation. So White Cross started from the center of all things pop culture, Waukegan, Illinois.
Yeah.
But before that, what's your foundation? When did you come to know who Christ was?
Well, I don't have a great. There's people that have really dramatic stories
Right.
about, oh, some people in my family, no, just kidding. Um, but oh, I was doing drugs, I was doing this, I was doing that. I don't have any of these big stories. What I had was I had a mom who took me to church,
Okay.
and I can never recall a time in my life when I didn't sense that God was always had a grip on me. And when I was 17 years old, I read this book, The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey,
Hmm.
which has since gone on to like all of the things that it predicted have pretty much basically
He was the
not come
forefront
true.
authority on end times.
Yeah, and it's like nothing turned out the way that he said that it would, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, there was a sinner's prayer at the back of the book, which I prayed sincerely, and I took that. So I've always kind of, that was when I took like a step forward, and it went from, well, this was like an environment that I grew up in
Hmm.
to making it a personal connection for myself. And I've always um, sensed that God has have a plan for me, and my purpose is to seek after the Lord and to seek after His plan.
I think sometimes that's the best testimony. I kind of share the same thing. I was raised in the church, and it never really don't have those stories either. But
Yeah.
I had somebody tell me, an evangelist, say that's probably one of the best testimonies is
In a
being
way, yeah.
raised in the church, and here you are today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so you released quite a few albums,
Yeah.
and there was a point though that you dropped, I don't know, was it 5 or 6 albums, and then you guys decided to part ways for a little bit.
Our first album exploded, it blew up, and like instantly I put the band on the map. And then we toured constantly for 5 years, and um, things got very difficult. Um, Approximately 1993, 94. I'm not quite sure of the timeline.
Okay.
Things came to a head. Myself and Scotty, we always had. I always referred to it as a shotgun wedding, and we
Okay.
stayed together for the sake of the baby, which is the band.
Yeah.
Um, we relate to things differently. We both be in the same situation together and draw different conclusions. I mean, we agree on basic theology, and then
Okay.
after that, we have different points of view. Um, my my daughter, who was 3 years old at the time, needed open heart surgery.
Hmm.
So I needed to, and this came up like really fast, and I needed to be home for about 6 weeks. And that it came at a really bad time for the band. And that just, everything just kind of fell apart at that point. So
Okay.
we diverged from that point. And Scotty continued on as WhiteCross. That's when I started working with Jimmy Bennett, who's formed the King James Band.
King James, sure.
Which is just a play on words. My name means king in Latin.
Okay.
And James Edgar Bennett. That's my bro in King James.
There we go.
And he does a lot of preaching these days.
And you guys did an album recently,
he's
fairly
got a
recently.
pastor's heart, man. He does some great sermons.
That's really, and that's a huge part of a Christian band. Forgive me for the opinion, but is lacking today.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that always endeared me to King James was that There was just things that happened with King James. I have a lot of respect for Jimmy's ministry as a preacher, and I think that the Lord used that band in many ways unexpected, and bringing blessing back to the band as well.
Yeah.
So that band, even though it never quite hit the same level as Whitecross, but nevertheless, that band was also really good for me as well.
And you guys have a fairly new album out from King James, correct?
Well, yeah, it came out in 2013, so
Oh, has it been that long?
yeah. I mean,
Wow.
so King James has actually done 3 albums together.
Right.
Um, and at this point, I don't know if we'll do another album or not, but um, we've never disbanded. In the year 2000, Whitecross reconvened to play at Cornerstone,
Right.
and then we just picked up where we left off and kept going from then until now. And
Is
now
there
at
a
this
version
point,
of White Cross right now?
well, yeah, at this point, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but so my co-ministry days with Scotty had come to a conclusion,
Okay.
and that's looking at it the best way. Uh, but we just, we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. So it's better for him to be able to do what he needs to be with like-minded musicians, and I need to be with like-minded musicians, and it's fine. People are different.
Right.
Um,
And people
so
grow, paths switch up, sure.
we have definitely had like something like 36 years together as a band, which is longer than most marriages.
A long time.
So yeah, that's a long time. And it's not the end of ministry by any means. There are exciting things happening. So
But somewhere
life
in all
and
of this,
ministry and music continue to go on, but of course, Whitecross is the thing that I'm most known for, as we all are in the band.
right, and somewhere in amongst everything, the Rex Carroll Blues Band came out of there.
I have like so many different groups and different things. It's crazy. I have the Rex Carroll Blues Band, and that I finally stopped. I had let that go on account of I can't find any decent blues musicians around Chicago area that are not all like there are decent musicians, but they're all living a completely different lifestyle
Okay.
that's not compatible. Um, so I had given up on that idea. It's like, well, I guess I'll just be a rocker till the day I die. And then, um, lately, I've teamed up with Tommy Brown from Atlanta and Michael Fian, who's the longtime Whitecross
Oh,
drummer.
yeah.
And so we're doing a new trio called the Blues Factor, which is just a continuation of the whole bluesy thing that
Yeah.
I love. I mean, the Rex Carroll band was like a blues rock. I started out as a blues band, but it became a rock band with a blues influence.
Okay.
Um, and that's kind of what we're doing with the Blues Factor, although it's a little more hardcore. Sonically, I'd say more towards like a Stevie Ray Vaughan meets a ZZ Top kind of.
And I'll be honest with you, there's a huge void in Christian music today with that sound. The first time I met you,
we're not trying to be necessarily a Christian band. We're just trying to be a band that is where we're all believers in the band.
yeah,
And we do want to bring a ministry wherever we go, and we have done that so far. And whereas Whitecross will always be evangelism first, foremost, everything. There's a tradition there that is very important. That tradition must never be allowed to deviate from that, because that's what Whitecross is, and that's what I feel that it always should be.
And that's
as
the
well
first.
as with King James.
Yeah, and that's the first time I heard you play live was at Cornerstone. You were with your blues band, and
Yeah.
it actually reminded me of, I don't know if you remember bands like Jacob's Trouble, and there was a band that had a southern rock blues sound to it, and
Yeah.
but your band was like,
not really familiar with them.
okay, your band was like leaps and bounds, it was like well, you could just tell it was a refreshing sound because the sanctuary kind of packed out for this sound.
See, here's the thing, Bob, is that I didn't grow up with Christian music.
Hmm.
Um, Christian music, Christian rock music didn't really exist
Yeah.
in my teenage years. So all of my influences, all of my guitar heroes are all the old, mainstream guys. Anybody from Eddie Van Halen to Peter Frampton to these old blues guys, Johnny Winter, Richie Blackmore, Deep Purple.
Yeah.
Um, those are all. I grew up listening to like mainstream rock and roll, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, all
Okay.
those kinds of things. And I from the time I was about 10, I never wanted to do anything else other than just play guitar.
Well, it's no wonder you glommed onto the Res Band when you met them.
Yeah, I mean, I love uh, when I saw Glenn being just totally free to play his guitar and sing his brains out, and then switch on a dime and share the
Yeah.
love of Christ freely.
Yeah.
Wow, that's like really cool, and that's where I wanted to be. And I had a Christian rock band in those days, and we literally we were getting thrown out of churches.
Wow.
Like we'd go in, we'd start to play, and after like the third song, the pastor would come up and say, "Well, that concludes the evening's activities,"
You
and
just
then he
weren't
would say
ready.
to us, "You guys are carrying the ark on an ox cart," which is a way of saying that rock and roll is not an acceptable or appropriate medium to carry the gospel.
Yeah.
That's what he was, and that happened a couple of times.
Okay.
So that's what we were dealing with back in those days.
Sure. Well, and it was kind of neat for me to see back in October of 2018. I had you and Glenn up at the church that I pastor.
Yeah.
You guys got to play together.
Oh yeah,
That was an amazing time.
yeah, that was nice for me to be able to do that. Well, a year ago. Now Glenn does prison ministry all the time.
Yeah.
That's really his calling, and so I was able to go out and do some of that with Glenn like a year ago, and I went for the education.
Okay.
I'm still a young whippersnapper. I'm still learning about all this stuff.
Pick up one of his cigar box guitars and start jamming. Right?
Nah, see, that's where I draw the line with Glenn. He's trying to go less and less, more minimal.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, give me 6 strings,
There you go.
6 strings and a Marshall stack.
Well, let's have a little fun here. Let me ask you this: your least favorite White Cross song?
Wow. Probably. Well, I don't think that's fair to say because there are songs that I don't like that have really changed people's lives, literally.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know if you got
you're up
time
on
for.
stage.
I don't know if you have time for a quick story or not.
Oh yeah, we got time.
Okay, I mean, in 1989, we were working on our third album. I had a vague idea about, well, what happens if I just play an acoustic guitar thing and just keep playing it over and over and stacking like tracks? Like, what would happen like if I get to like 200 tracks of guitar?
Wow.
And they cut me off after 16. Mr. Carroll, you've been overserved.
Oh no.
So, so I was just kind of feeling like my little Jimmy Page moment there. But we turned it into a song, Turns out it was in the wrong key for Scotty's voice, so he didn't like the song.
Okay.
It was called Simple Man. And he's like, "Well, this is not a good song. You know, it doesn't sing well for me, so we're never going to play this song." So we never did. Out of sight, out of mind. Fast forward 30 some years. Last year, for the first time ever, I mean, this was historical for me personally.
Yeah.
We went to India, of all places, and first thing when we get off the plane, you guys are going to do Simple Man, right?
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, well, we've never done this song since it came out on the album. We've never played it live. She says, oh, you got to play this song. Uh, Everybody knows it. Why does everybody know it? Oh, we teach it to our kids in Sunday school.
Well, isn't that
And
something?
I'm like, you're kidding me. Why is that? It's because it's a very simple song that people can learn. They can play along on their guitar or their piano, and it's a nice little template for Christian living. So you can teach it to school children, and it works on that level, and it conveys a beautiful, simple message.
Yeah.
And I was floored. And so here we are. So we're doing the song, and everybody's got their cell phones out, having a moment, and they all, the song is like a blessing to people, like literally halfway around the world, and I have no clue.
How cool is that? That's something you can't expect.
We never find out until like 30 some years later. So, which is like a little piece of advice that I always give to musicians, because I have my studio here, so I'm always working in the studio.
Yeah.
And I always advise people there is no such thing as a demo. It's only a demo. No, dude, as soon as you record it, it's perpetual.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm only going to play it for so and so. No, you play it for one person and they play it for somebody else. And then the next thing you know, somebody posted it, then it's on YouTube, and forget about it. It's out there.
Especially today.
So you cannot ever do anything less than your best work. You may be recording on, like, well, maybe the recording quality isn't like a full blown album production,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, it has to represent the best of what you are every single time. You're only as good as your latest work.
Yeah. Well, and I know 90s era youth groups would say their favorite song was In the Kingdom. But
Yeah,
what
still a
is
great song.
it is, and what would be your favorite song that you like when you see it on the set list? You're like, that's my song. That's the one I like to do.
I've always loved No Second Chances, because it's fun, it's up tempo, it's a great message, and it's fun to play. And We Know What's Right is another song that I really love.
Okay.
And I don't know, I guess well, whatever's on the next album, those are my favorite songs.
There you go. Well, let me ask you this as we start to wrap up here.
So yeah, I'm giving you political answers, but I don't think it's really fair to say what's your least favorite.
Well, we'll give you a hall pass.
Because yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: since we're talking metal, past and present,
Right.
what's your take on Christian metal, Christian rock today?
Well, my friend Kevin Young, he is tearing it up in Disciple,
Disciple, yeah.
and they're getting a little long in the tooth as well. But I'll tell you what, they're not getting long in the tooth on is, you don't. I don't like it when I read about Christian music leaders. All of a sudden, you read an article. Oh, I don't really believe in God anymore.
And that's been going on.
There's been a rash of that in the
Yeah.
last 10 years. And that's very discouraging, because it gives a black eye to the whole, well, it gives a black eye to the church.
It does.
And I think the number one excuse that people have is like when they want to resist um, coming to terms with God is, oh well, somebody I was hurt by somebody in the church, or
Hmm.
the church set a bad example. And, I mean, you and I know the answer to that. Well, of course, the church is full of hypocrites.
Yeah,
There's room
it
for
is.
one more. Please come in.
Yep.
We know that, but that's a wall of defense that people put up, and it doesn't help the cause when you hear about, oh, so and so from this band is, not a believer anymore, or the band is, we're dropping the whole Christian bit.
Right.
We're all about mainstream success now.
Yeah, that gets frustrating.
Like, I so, but which makes me all the more grateful for people like Kevin
Yeah.
and Disciple. Solid ministry. We're getting after it.
Yep, they are.
Staying the course.
Yep. Well, one last fun thing here. When someone looks Rex Carroll up on YouTube and you're holding your guitar right now, inevitably they find Nagasaki Cornerstone.
Hey,
Can you play us a couple riffs off of that?
I don't know if I can.
Pretty good.
Something
Nice.
like that. I don't know.
There you go. Well, Rex, thanks so much for being with us on the first Origins of Christian Rock here.
Yeah, man.
Sanctuary Matrix. So I sure appreciate you as a friend and musician and everything. So people want to get in touch with you, they can go to your Facebook page. I'll put that up on the screen.
Yeah, I have a web page, rexcarrollmusic.com. But that's I don't pay attention to that page too much. So that works for occasionally people are looking for guitar lessons, so they'll come to me through that. But I'm available on Facebook to anybody who likes to chat. And I know I'm supposed to do Instagram and all these new social media things,
Right.
but ain't nobody got time for that.
That's right. Just go to good old Facebook,
Yeah.
So, all right, well, we'll put that up on the screen. People can get a hold of you, guitar lessons. They can hear your music. They can conversate with you.
Yeah, they want to chat with me on Facebook. That's great.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks so much, Rex, for joining us.
You're welcome, Bob. Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right.